So I was talking about the FAFSA and how you have to be aware of the people who are offering to help you with your FAFSA and are going to manipulate a lot of things and move a lot of things around and help you find money and all kinds of things like that. Because with the FAFSA, you have to understand that there is a number that is determined by the federal government, which then, and that's what your application does, and that's what this is. But with that, they make a determination as to whether or not you're entitled to get free money, grants that you don't have to pay back. So there's the Pell Grant, which is from the federal government that provides about $8,200 a year if you meet the need. In Pennsylvania, there's a state grant that's around, last year it was around $4,000. I haven't seen the budget for next year, but if you have an expected family contribution of zero, you'll qualify for that money. In addition, the federal government has additional grants for people who don't have the money to go to college. The Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant is another grant you can get. It's between $2,000 and $4,000. But again, all of that, folks, depends upon you having an expected family contribution, a full amount, an expected family contribution with two people in the household and one or two kids. You ready for this? Your expected family contribution will be zero if your adjusted gross income is $27,000. So I'm not sure what your financial situation is. I'm not sure what it is that you're hoping to get for free, from the government, but I tell you that so that you're not freaking out when we're going through the FAFSA, okay? I don't want you to be worried that, if I do something terribly wrong, if I report too much money, I'm not going to get any financial aid. Remember, this FAFSA form is the federal government making a determination, one, whether you have income that will cover the amount of the educational aspect, the school aspect of college, and it is their role is to provide you with enough money to pay for the tuition of an in-state institution. Now, unfortunately, Pennsylvania is a very expensive state, and but with the federal money and the state money, if you're down at the zero expected family contribution, or if you're have several kids in college, I will take you through some of this calculation for purposes of getting money. So I apologize again for when I blasted off before. My computer stopped. I'm just going to pull up a document very quickly that I'm going to share with you, and that is the FAFSA, and we are going to go through it. So let me find my FAFSA 2022-2023 form, and let me share my screen with you. And this is what the application, where is it? Come on. You were screen sharing. Can somebody let me know whether or not, it doesn't look like I'm screen sharing. Are you seeing, can somebody let me know whether you're seeing the FAFSA form? Just do like a little thumbs up or something, and or unmute and somebody say, yes, I see it, or no, I don't. Oh, here we go. The chat says, yeah, oh, yay. Okay, well, I can't see it. Okay, everybody, let's go through this, right? So the first question people always ask is, well, what do I need in order to do my FAFSA? Okay, So when you go to this FAFSA form, and it won't tell you, and by the way, let's get on to where FAFSA is. So in order to get to your FAFSA form, this is not what it looks like online, but this is all the information, okay? So if you go to studentaid.gov or FAFSA, here, let me show you .org, it will take you to, here, it'll take you to the government website for financial aid. And let me see, oops, not ORF, here you go. Okay, I'm assuming you're about to see this. Here we go, we're going for federal financial aid. And this is what the page should look like. Can we see that page? I'm assuming that's the page you see. Okay. So if you're new to the FAFSA process, you're going to complete the FAFSA form. It's free. Fill it out now. It does tell you that there's been a new application launch, what to do if your financial situation has changed. I'm going to go over all of that, and then you can find out what your FAFSA deadline is, just so you're not concerned. Let's put in, well, I'm not Palau, so let's put in Pennsylvania. And if you select your year for the 2023 academic year, just so you know, the FAFSA technically does not close until, I believe it's June. Let's see, state deadline is August 1st, 2022, right? So that's for Pennsylvania. You want to make sure before they go to school in Pennsylvania that you have it done by August 1st, 2022. Check with the college, but June 30th, 2023 is the last time you can get a FAFSA in for the 2022-2023 school year. There's Aiden, don't use a virtual assistant. What I want you to see is when you return, because you don't have to finalize it the first time you do it, you're a returning user. What does it mean for that? Well, one of the questions that comes up is when you do your FAFSA, you can only list 4 colleges. And then what do? Well, once you submit your FAFSA form and it's received, and you receive what's called a student aid report, an SAR, that'll come in the mail, in your email within 3 days. Once you have that, you go back in to your FAFSA form, you remove the colleges you've already sent the FAFSA to, and you add additional ones. So it says it's free, fill it out. You start here, and I'm not going to go very far, but I will show you. This is the page it takes you to. It's very important if it says, if you're filling out the FAFSA form. I don't know many students who do. I am a parent filling out the FAFSA form, and then this is the introductory stuff that you need. You're always going to need your student's first name and last name, their date of birth, and social security number. I guess it's different times. Most people don't know their kids' social security numbers, or wife's or husband's social security numbers. I think that's a generational thing, but you do need that. I want to point something out. I don't take sides politically when I do this stuff. I know that there are people from one side or the other, and there's some groups of people who think that there's an evil cabal, might or might not be, involved in the government and Masonic, I'm a Mason, Masonic rituals and devil. And I think the government is playing a trick, because if you look here, what I'm talking about, it says student social security number. And if a student doesn't have a social security number because he or she is a citizen of a trust territory and it's their first time filling out the FAFSA, enter 666 in the field. It was never like that until this year. It was always 90. So I don't really want to talk. I just thought that was interesting. So there, send it out in the Twitterverse. Something is going on. All right. So back to the form. Okay. So what is it that you need? If you filed your 2020 tax form, that is what you're going to need. FAFSA looks back 2 years. Your EFC, expected family contribution, is going to be based upon what 2020 was like for you. For most people, 2020 was a horrific year because of COVID. It's something I want you to be aware of. when you put it in, when you fill in your information, if you have a substantially lower adjusted gross income in 2020 and you get an expected family contribution that's pretty low or qualifies you for, maybe you're unemployed the whole time, you get you get a zero and you get a full federal and state grant. Please be aware, for purposes of planning, that every year you have to file a FAFSA. And that means if things, by the time your kid is in their third year of school, you'll be up to the current year. And if last year was better and this year's better and next year's better, just plan in the event that you get yourself out of the need-based aid. Okay, so just because you file a FAFSA once and you have a zero EFC doesn't mean it's going to stay that way. So your tax returns, you should have your tax returns with you, but the caveat is there is an IRS data retrieval tool. See here, make it bigger. It says right there, IRS data retrieval tool. Once you get to that point, what that does is you basically, when you get to the point of filling out all of your financial information, you can have most of it transferred directly from the IRS into your FAFSA. A great thing about that is that you don't have to worry about filling in all the information. The bad thing about it is that you don't see what information is transferred and you're trusting the IRS. And if there's a mistake, you'll not know it until you get an expected family contribution that's 3 times your income. So it's not that difficult to go through and fill this out on your own. But what I always recommend is when I have clients that use the IRS data retrieval tool, we look at their EFC. I then calculate their EFC and based upon their tax returns and make sure everything is there. Okay, so it says it right here. Here's the deadlines. Here's your tax returns, filling out the FAFSA form. And let's just go right to it. What's the FAFSA form? As I said, it's a free application for student aid. It says it's the first step in the financial aid process. I don't like to be the bearer of bad news. I'll be the bearer of obvious news. College is extremely expensive. Colleges maybe eventually will not be as expensive now because there's a lot of things that are changing. But right now, you are expected to pay for college. The FAFSA will provide you with a knowledge as to whether you're going to get free need-based aid. That is not merit aid. That's not how much your kid is worth to a school with respect to scholarship. Is what is your need. Once the federal government determines your expected family contribution and where you are on the need index, it goes to the school. Every school or institution has their own aid index and way of determining need. And just because the federal government says you don't have need for purposes of federal funding doesn't mean that a school with a large endowment and a desire to have your kid there won't consider it as need. Okay, but let's fill out this form knowing that we're going to be paying for college, right? And it tells you one here that I told you about how you can get more than 4 colleges on there. Okay, let's get into it. Number 1, please make sure when you're in a student section, you're using student information. When you're in a parent section, use parent information. I know it sounds silly, but trust me, this thing is horribly drafted and it'll start saying, are you married? And then you go, of course I'm married. And then you forget you're in the student section. And do you have dependents? Of course I have dependents. Just be very careful, okay? It does say clearly, but it's easier on this form because it's blue. The student section is blue. Okay, so what do we need? Line number 1 is last name, first name, middle initial. Please make sure you get it correct. There are people who frequently make mistakes. Your permanent mailing address. That means your student's permanent mailing address. I know the question is, Jay, what address do I use if I'm divorced and I have a situation where I'm sharing custody and they live at both places? Well, the easiest thing to do is, where do they get their mail? What do you have them at their high school? Where is that mail sent? And just because the mail is sent there doesn't preclude the situation where someone else The child is spending time 50-50 with other parents or the other parent, and for purposes of mail, just wherever it's better for them to get mail. It used to be for purposes of determining whose financial information they were going to use, the government was going to use, they would say whoever you spent 50.1% of your time. Now they say, please report the information for the person that provides the most financial support during the year. I'm not going to dig into what your personal finances are, but that's how you determine the parent. That's how they determine which parent is financial situation is going to be used for purposes of expected family contribution. All right, city, state, zip code. Make sure when you do the drop down and you put PA, it's not Palau. Make sure it's Pennsylvania. The 5-digit zip code. Your social security number, student's social security number. The student's date of birth, the student's telephone number, get their driver's license. It used to be optional. Well, if you have one, it is. You need the driver's license number and the driver's license state. Why would they need that? They always ask, why do they need that? Well, one, they want to determine residency and make sure that you're driving there. Secondly, they do it to make sure there's no DUIs or DWIs or accidents or whatever else that they look for. Your email address, here it is, folks. Do not use the email address that your kids have from school. You know, first name dot last name, add the 3 initials of the high school, school district.org. Don't do that. Why shouldn't you do that? Well, a couple reasons. The primary reason is you better have access to wherever email is coming, because there'll be a lot of things, especially when they get notifications of the EFC and the SAR, the student aid report and everything else. You'll miss things. When the admissions keep coming in or they're coming in and the offers of financial aid are coming in, have an email address. If your kid doesn't have a Gmail or a Yahoo, get one specifically for these purposes. Are you a US citizen? No, but I'm an eligible non-citizen. No, I'm not a citizen or eligible non-citizen. International students are not eligible to file the FAFSA. It doesn't mean that they're not going to be eligible for financial aid from the school. It also doesn't preclude in some states aliens, eligible non-citizens, because right now there is no ineligible non-citizen for many of these institutions. Just make sure. Many kids don't know if they're a citizen. I mean, I'm talking about kids who were born here. I mean, am I a citizen, Mom? So put it in there, alien registration only if you have one. What is your marital status? Your kids should be single. It says month and year you were married. Please make sure this is all with respect to the student. Legal resident before January 1st, 2017. I assume so. And then this is if the answer is no, legal residency, blah, blah, blah. Are you a male or female? Pick one just for purposes of right here, because, and this, I'm really confused because I saw legislation that said that they were no longer going to be using selective service registration with the FAFSA. It does say most male students must register with selective service. If you're male and haven't registered, fill in the circle and they'll register for you. You don't have to register for the draft selective service for your most male students through here, but you do have to have them registered or they will not get federal financial aid. Might as well have them registered. Have you been convicted for the possession or sale of illegal drugs for an offense that occurred while you're receiving federal aid? They don't want you to commit crimes while you're being subsidized by the federal government. And then answer no if you've never received it, so that shouldn't be easy. Some states and colleges offer aid based on the level of schooling your parents completed. Yeah, there are some states that do that. It typically comes as an incentive to those in the underserved community. These aren't difficult questions, folks. I know you don't need me to take you through this. I just want to take the scare off of the FAFSA. Highest school completed by parent 1, highest school completed by parent 2. You'll see it when you get into the parent section. It'll ask you where you went to school. What will your high school completion status be when they begin college? Then it's going to be a high school diploma. And then on the drop down, it's going to say, and it's down here in 30, what college degree or certificate will you be working on when you begin the school year? It's first bachelor's degree, unless you're going to a community college or a technical school or a certificate, whatever it is. So look through here and see what it is you're getting. It's the same form, whether you're going down here to graduate school, MBA, MD, PhD, or your bachelor's degree. High school name, high school city, and the state of the high school, and then they will not have their first bachelor's degree before they start. Make sure you list your school correctly. It'll be a drop down. If you can't find it, there'll be a number for it. In the Central Bucks School District system, it's Central Bucks High School and then the direction. Central Bucks or Council Rock High School North, Central Bucks High School West. Make sure that's correct. Not tough so far, right? Here we go. So now we get down to step 2. And by the way, are you interested in being considered for work study? It's a question that people always get. So what is the difference between work study and getting a job on campus? If your student applies for work study and they will get a determination as to an amount that the federal government says they're willing to reimburse the school for the work that they do. So if they work at the dining hall and it says $2,500, well, then they'll work at the dining hall, and the first $2,500 they make at the dining hall or the bookstore or wherever, at the gym or wherever they work, will be reimbursed by the federal government. Work study is a good thing to say, yes, I want to be interested in, because typically those students who have work study get employed first at the university because the school gets reimbursed. Even if you're being interested for work study, it's not an indication. This is one of the questions on the Common App. Do you intend to apply for need-based financial aid? Well, I read recently that unless you make over $350, you should say yes. I will tell you that depending upon the school and what they're looking for, schools do need people who are able to pay the full or close to the full amount. If you can and want to and might pay or willing to pay full boat, say no, you're not interested in that. But you are interested in work study, it will not change. Answer questions 32 through 57 about yourself, the student, if you're never married, widowed, divorced. So have you completed the IRS tax return or another state tax return listed in 23 and 33? Look, if your kid made less than, I think, $6,200 or something around there, I don't know, I'm not an accountant. You know, you don't have to file a tax return. If you did, then you did. You can say, yes, I did. And why would you say that? Well, because if they, I don't know, if you got a tax refund back and they got $320, then when you do the IRS data retrieval tool, it's going to say, yeah, I have $320. And they'll go, well, put $60 of that towards your education. What income tax return did you or will you file for 2020? What's your status? Should be single if they did it. Okay. Just because you file the tax return doesn't mean you have to if you didn't make enough money. I'm not going to file. Skip to question 38. It's not going to make a hill of beans one way or the other. Again, if you're in a situation where you're in the need situation, where you're going to have an adjusted gross income of less than $27,000 as a dual income family or a single income, or if you have 2 kids and it's $33,000, and that's for a 0 EFC. If you end up with an EFC that's, I don't know, 1,000, 2,000, 3, 5, 10,000, depending upon the school, you may get need-based aid from the school. You also can get a portion of a Pell Grant. So the financial people, and I can do it as well, who look at what you're doing, does it matter if my kid has money in their own name and their own account? Does it matter if I have this asset or that asset? What's it going to do to my expected family contribution? Once you're out of the need range, it doesn't matter how much in excess of the need range you are. You're out of the need range, and then keep your money to yourself. You're gonna have to use it all or use whatever you can to pay for school anyway. But it's when you're close. It's when you do a calculation evaluation, and the difference of your student having $10,000 in a savings account where the government's going to take $2,000 towards the expected family contribution. And so that'll up your EFC. You know, it might make a difference if that money is now in your name because they only look at 5.6% of that money, and that may not take you out of the need range. But there's really no need to be shuffling things around before you know whether you're going to get in for the close to zero EFC. And by the way, people ask all the time, look, if you intended to get full financial aid, if you're going to go to a school that meets needs, going to pay all that stuff, doing your FAFSA for the first time and looking at this for the first time the year your kid goes to college, there's nothing you're really going to be able to do to significantly impact that. Not for 2020. For the future years, you want to quit your job and live in a hut or send all your money somewhere and live paper cash poor, that's on you. But I always tell people, what if I want to go to a school? Like Pennsylvania has high in-state tuition. So, you know, what if you say, I want my kid to go to UVA? And if you go to UVA or University of North Carolina, it's easier to get into the schools and the tuition is, you know, pennies on the dollar from anywhere else. Well, then the best thing for you to do is move to that state before your kid's a senior in high school. You do that, you finish up there, you get in-state tuition there. That'd be worth a significant amount of money. Okay, so let's keep going on. Question 35, did you file a Schedule 1, you know, untaxed income? I don't think your kids have that. You know, Schedule 1 is for unemployment or education expenses or IRA deductions, student loan interest, Alaska Permanent Fund dividend. None of that applies. If the answer for this is 0, the questions don't apply to you. So again, this is for the student, adjusted gross income for 2020, spouses, you don't have a spouse, hopefully they're not married. But it is interesting because it does ask you about, this is a question you're going to have to answer. Even if you're filing through IRS data retrieval, you're still going to need to separate, and you put your adjusted gross income that way, you're going to need to separate what you made versus what your spouse made. Okay. All right, just checking to make sure that everybody was still here. Okay, let's go on. As of today, this is another question going to be answered by you as well, for yourself, the parents, and the kid. Question 40, as of today, what's your total current balance of cash savings in checking accounts? And then the question becomes, what's the net worth of your investments, including real estate? Don't include your home, obviously for the kids, and then net worth of a business or investment firm. I'll be going over that in detail so you know what to do. Again, cash, savings, and checking when it comes to you, the parents. That's the cash, savings, and money you have in your checking account as of the day you file the form. So if you got a settlement from something, or you have money coming in, or you get paid once a month and you're running, you run your household after your account, and you get a $9,000 once a month in your account, and by the end of the month you're down to a couple dollars, don't file this thing when you have $9,000 in your account. And it doesn't matter if you do, because if your average daily balance is significantly lower, use that. It's an accurate representation of what you typically have after, you know, sitting around after you've paid all of your bills. All right, let's keep going on. So now there's additional information for the kids. Did they get any of this? Education credits? No. Child support paid because of divorce or separation, or as a result of a legal requirement, right? Child support paid. Does not include support for children in your household. This is, did your kids who have kids get divorced and have that? So no, that's not where child support that you might get from a ex-spouse goes. Taxable earnings from need-based employment. That'll be if you get federal work study. It really stinks that the government takes your taxes to give you money to offset the cost of college. And when you get that, you have to pay taxes on that. Combat pay, earnings from work under a co-op. These are things that may come up as your kids stay in school, but not as of now. Untaxed income. Here's the question again for your kids. Did they receive any payments to tax-deferred pension and retirement savings plans, right? And by the way, it's the student. And this is talking about people who are adults and returning to school or going to school later and have all this stuff. Your kids aren't going to have IRA deductions or child support received for their kids or tax-exempt interest income. You may be the custodian of something that gets it, but they aren't. Housing, food, other living expenses for military. Other untaxed income. Questions become, did you receive workers' comp, disability, untaxed foreign income, right? The question comes up, what about SSI or SSD that a kid might get? Or it says, do not include extended foster care benefits, student aid, earned income, additional child tax credit. Don't include welfare. Don't include untaxed Social Security benefits, SSI, workforce innovation opportunity education benefits, etc. Okay? Don't overreport things, especially if your student doesn't have it. Money received or paid on your behalf, not elsewhere. So that's money you receive from a parent or other person whose financial information is not reported on this form and is not a part of a legal child support agreement. That's where granny and grandma and granddad's contribution goes if it's documented and if that's the way that it comes in. It's probably their money goes either to you or directly to the school, and that counts less in your EFC. And then finally, these are easy. Here's the easy part. We're getting out of here. We're getting to the pink part or the purple part, which is your part. I'm going as fast as I can. If you have questions, again, feel free to ask, chat, let me know. Okay. So the student, were they born before January 99? No. Are you married? No. So at 47, these are all going to be no for most of you. Are they serving on duty? No. Veteran? No. Do they have kids? No. Do they have dependents? No. At any time since you turned age 13, were both of your parents deceased? Were you in foster care or were you a dependent of or ward of the state? And it says, see notes on page 10. I highly recommend when you're doing your FAFSA form, if you're not hiring someone like me and you need definitions, go to the horse's mouth, print out this 10-page form. Pages 8, 9, and 10 have all the definitions that you will need. So guardianship, right? They're talking about parents deceased, ever determined by a court order of the state of legal residence. Were you an emancipated minor? If they are, then I guess that you're not going to be filling it out for your kids. Someone other than your parent or step-parent have legal guardianship as determined by the state. Did a homeless liaison determine you were unaccompanied youth? I work with children all the time who are wards of the state in the foster care system, are at risk of homelessness, emergency shelter, and runaway or homeless. Okay. It said if you answered no to every step in question 3, go to step 4. That's for your parent. Any yes, you have to go to step 5. That's supplemental information. Okay, now to the good stuff, right? All right, now to the stuff you're all interested in. Here you go, parents. As of today, so it says, let's make sure you know what's going on. It says, answer all the questions in step 4, even if you don't live with your legal parents, right? This is for the kids to do. If the parent listed is on the birth certificate, grandparents, foster parents, legal guardians, widowed step-parents, aunts, uncles, siblings are not parents unless they legally adopted you. if your legal parents are married to each other or not married to each other and live together. Answer the questions about both of them. If your parent was never married or is remarried, divorced, separated, or widowed, then you just follow the instructions. And basically it goes down to who has custody, what's the custody arrangement, do you have an agreement, and who's providing the most support for that child. Frequently, the person who's supplying the most support sometimes is the parent making the least amount of money. I don't ask, they just tell. Okay, Social Security number, parent one, parent two. I'm going to go as if parents are married in this case. If not, and with the married part, it's look, parent one, parent two. Does it matter? Does the bigger earner go first? Is it? Listen, I'm not getting involved in your marriage. Pick whoever, just be consistent. Parent one, parent two. You guys need your Social Security numbers, last name, first initial, and date of birth. What's your marital status of your parents and the month and year they were married, remarried, separated, divorced, or widowed? I had somebody a year ago ask me, what if all of those apply to me? Just pick the last one, the one that applies to your financial situation. Your parents' email address, one of you have an email address. Parents' legal state of residence. When did you become a resident in this state? And know then when you did. Pay attention to this. How many people are in your parents' household? Please understand it doesn't matter what dependents you declared on your taxes. Being a dependent for purposes of FAFSA EFC is not, not tied to that necessarily. Here's what we always get. Well, we're divorced. He has one dependent. I have one dependent. Every other year he has two. I have one, right? How many kids do you have together? It says, how many people are in your parents' household? You, even if you don't live with your parents, your parents' other children, even if they do not live with your parents. If A, your parents provide more than half of their support between July 22 and June of 23, or the children could answer no to every question we went above in step 3 when they're independent, and they go to page 5. And other people, if they now live with your parents provide more than half of their support, and your parents will continue to provide more than half of their support between that time. Kids move back home with their spouses, lots of people in the house. That counts as a person in your household. Then how many people, number 73, in your parents' household will be college students between July 22 and June 23? Always count yourself as a college student. Do not include your parents, do not include siblings in the military service academies. Why? Because it doesn't cost anything to send them there. You can include others only if they attend at least half-time a program that leads to a college degree or certificate. I don't know what your situation is. Maybe you have some kids taking some courses and feeling their way through. So that's how many kids are in college. Why does that matter? Believe it or not, it matters a lot. It used to be automatic that you would fill out your FAFSA, you would get an expected family contribution. Let's say it came out to $20,000. Once you had 2 kids in college, your expected family contribution for each child was $10,000, and then so on and so on. And then based upon that expected family contribution, that split, then if they went to different schools, then you were in a lesser financial situation with respect to expectations of what you were going to pay, and it could increase the amount of money that a school was willing to pay you. But they caught on to that for some reason, or decided that's no good anymore. So it doesn't matter if you have 3 kids in and your EFC is $20,000. They're going to say, that's triplets. I have triplets that I've worked with. I have twins now. They're going to say for each kid, it's $20,000. So your EFC, which would ordinarily be $20,000 and with 3 kids would go ahead, is now $60,000 or $40,000. That's not fair. Well, all they did was shifted the burden to you to point it out to the college that yes, the EFC is $20,000, but there's two of them. And the college will, if you appeal, make, at least you're updating their record, and they will make a change. Please note, any and everything that relates to the financial situation in your household needs to be effectively communicated to the colleges so that they can act accordingly. I don't want you to call them and said, I won the lottery, take my financial aid away. But if you're having difficulties, if there's been a change, and this is the thing I want you to know, because people say, Jay, I feel uncomfortable using my 2020 taxes because it's not representative of how I'm doing now, whether it's good or bad. They didn't ask you for that on this form. They need a baseline. They're using that 2020 as a baseline. It is then incumbent upon you to say, by the way, this is what my current financial situation is. It's worse than it was before. And here's the proof. Here are the documents. And I need you to make accommodations for that so that it's accurate. And if you're in the middle of a school year and something happens and you have a decrease in your income or ability to pay, let the school know so that they can at least have an opportunity to help you if they so want. Okay. Let's see, 73 is how many college students? Okay, number 73, second part. At any time during 2020 or 2021, did you or anybody in your household receive benefits from any of the federal programs listed? Medicaid or SSI, SNAP, free or reduced price school lunch, temporary assistance for needy, and WIC, right? Supplemental nutrition. In our school district, in most of Bucks County, kids were given free or reduced price school lunches. Check that off. It's an indication. It's a true indication of what you've gotten. It also is still being considered for purposes of need. Now, here we go. Coming up to the point where you're going to have to put, it says, will you be reporting your parents' financial information? Actually, it says you have to report your parents' financial information. You'll be asked a couple of questions, and depending upon your answers, you may or may not have to provide additional information. This is where on the form it'll say you have the IRS data retrieval tool. So it says, if your answer to question 58 was unmarried with both legal parents living together, then it says you can, I don't know, go to 79 to 92. Hold on one second. Let's see. So I got a question. How do we let the school know if finances have changed? Is there a form or document to complete and submit for multiple schools? Well, the answer to that question is every school has an appeal process, but in actuality, the easiest way to get, and yes, you have to let the school know. Here's how you do it. You're by law allowed to do one of two things, well, both things. You can file for special circumstances, or you can have an appeal of your EFC. So when you get your expected family contribution and it doesn't represent reality, you can first make sure you can ask for an appeal, and each school has a process. You go on their website and request an appeal of the expected family contribution. They then will recalculate the expected family contribution based upon the information you provide them from 2020 to see if it's accurate. If the EFC is accurate, if the IRS data retrieval tool or you did not put in information that was incorrect, the next part is called special circumstances. So everybody, you write a letter to the financial aid department saying that you are notifying them of special circumstances that they need to consider for your financial aid. This is not scholarship. This is the financial aid office. Special circumstances. Some schools have forms, others you can just send as an email to the financial aid department. If you send a special circumstances letter saying, this is what happened, this is what the actuality is, the school will get back to you and say, here's our process, follow that, or thank you for your letter. Can you send documentation supporting that? So that's how you go to that to that point. All right, I hope that answered your question. Okay, for 2020, have your parents completed the IRS income tax return or another tax return listed? You indicate yes if you filed your tax return. What income tax return do they file? This is for a 1040, unless you're something else. What was your parents' tax filing status? And as of today, is either of your parents a dislocated worker? And you indicate, and then at that point, it's going to say, here's the IRS data retrieval tool. In order to do that, and I recommend that if you're uncomfortable with this stuff, to do that. It's just quicker to do it, and you get, an estimate of what the EFC is. They typically don't make mistakes. The problem is there's sometimes big mistakes made because of something an accountant may have gotten wrong. Highly unlikely, Melissa, but accountants do make mistakes. So, and the transfer can make a mistake, but try the IRS data retrieval tool. Here's what you need to do. It'll ask you at that point, and here's a major question for your FSA, Federal Student Aid ID, username and password. It's at that point where you, a parent, one of the parents and the student needs to get a Federal Student Aid ID. It's as simple as putting in your email, picking a password, giving your social, and then there'll be 4 questions that you can pick as far as your security questions. Once you do that, you're going to get a verified email address, username, and ID. At that point, you can try to use the IRS data retrieval tool. Frequently, there is trouble getting the IRS data retrieval tool on the day you're doing your FAFSA to transfer your information. If that happens, just wait a few days and go back and try to sign in. It does crash a lot, and there have been problems. Don't get frustrated because there aren't that many questions you still have to answer. I'm going to keep going through this because I'm trying to stay tight on time. I don't want to. In fact, I think my recording might stop automatically. I hope not. And if it does, I'll finish up. Okay, so let's go. 84, what was your parents' adjusted gross income for 2020? AGI is the thing. It says line 11, right? Adjusted gross income for the parents. What's the income tax, right? The total. So look, it's line 22 in your 1040 minus your Schedule 2 line 2. If you have it, a lot of times it could end up as 0. This is the other thing you're going to have to answer either with the even with the IRS data retrieval tool. Wages, salaries, tips, that's going to be on your W-2. It's also, the information may be on the W-2 or on 1040 line 1 plus Schedule 1. Remember, untaxed income lines 3 and 6. And then K1 if you have a partnership income or agreement, right? If an individual earning is negative, you don't include it. When you go through this, you're putting mainly zeros in a lot of these things. So then it says, so it's how much did parent 1 or parent 2 make? Separate. Sometimes you have a huge business loss. Parent 1 has 0, another parent has some money. And at that point, it may said you no longer, since you have a 0 for one of the parents and the other one may not be substantial, you might be able to then, it might not even ask you any additional questions, because it will ask you, or ask the child actually, do you want to answer information about your parents' assets? If at that point, well, first of all, that's primarily for students who don't get access to it, but secondly, you're going to have to report it at some time unless you have very little. As of today, what is your parents' total current balance of cash, savings, and checking? Right? Again, we talked about that: cash, savings, and checking accounts. This is different than investments. What is the net worth of your parents' investments, including real estate? I'm going to go through this because everything else is pretty easy. Okay, because once you get here, it's student, the student that you don't have to do 5. 6 is your name of the schools, and 7 is where you have to sign. But this is what I want to show you. What is my investment and what's current value? Net worth means the current value of investments, business, and investment farms minus the debt related to those, right? Investments include real estate, but not your home. It does include a rental property, right? That means if you have a multi-unit family home that has its own interest and it's rented. It includes trust funds, UGMA and UTMA accounts, money market, mutual funds, CDs, stock options, bonds, other securities, installment, and land sales contracts. I'm happy it says, how do we figure out what the investments or my portfolio is worth, right? It says investment value is the current balance or market value of these investments as of today, right? Investment debt means only those debts that are related to the investments. So you want to figure out what your holdings are. Investments also include educational benefits, the 529 accounts. For a student who doesn't report parental information, the accounts owned by the student are reported as student investments. Why is that important? Because it's taxed or looked at at a larger rate as far as contribution. For a student who has to report it, the accounts are parent investments in 89. So if you have a 529 and you own the 529, even if it's for your kid, and even if you have it for more than one kid, you have to report the full value of the 529 as a parental investment, okay? Money received or paid on your behalf or distributions to you, the student, from a 529 owned by somebody other than you or your parents, but that's the distribution. It hasn't been distributed if your kid's not in school. That'll go in the next year if they do it. What's a business or investment that I have to report, right? It says the market value of land, etc., but you don't have to report it. Your value does not include the value of a business if your family owns and controls more than half of the business and the business has 100 or fewer full-time employees, right? Don't put the value of the business. If you own more than 50%, but you have less than 100 or fewer employees, and I don't think most of you have farms, but it's the similar thing. That's what you have to be concerned about as far as determining what your investments are, okay? And you'll have accounts and everything from your brokers. I'm here if you want to ask questions, but please remember, sweating these details is only important if you're inside the need-based situation. Everything else is not going to matter. Once you're in excess of need-based for purposes of the FAFSA, doesn't matter how much extra there is. It really doesn't. What matters then, how do I get merit aid, is how we work to make sure the school is giving your kid the scholarships that they deserve. But I want to finish the FAFSA. I know I'm a minute late, but I'm going to keep going. So just keep going. Let's see. And again, these things change. And if I have people who have a $300,000 loss, then we report that, right? I mean, you can have a multi-million-dollar company and, but you took it in the seat during COVID, or you're having a bad time with it. You're not going to be penalized for having a business that lost money. They need to know what the situation is. Just keep in mind that if you recover, just make sure that you know that what you get this year is not what you're going to get next year. Okay, so here's your parents' investments. It says your family business. Additional financial information. We went through this before. This is child support that was paid because of a divorce or separation. Don't include support for children in your parents' household. Did your parent pay? Did they pay? Was it a debit from their household? Your parents' taxable earnings from need-based programs such as work, study, need-based employment. That's not going to apply to most of you. your parents' taxable college grant and scholarship, but it's reported to the IRS's income. It will come automatically from the data retrieval or already counted in the income. They just care about your income. Combat special co-op money, that's later. Untaxed income, you will know it's not difficult to find. You'll know if you have untaxed income, but please pay attention here. They don't want to know about your retirement accounts. That's not what they're looking for. Payments to tax-deferred pension and retirement plans paid directly or withheld from earnings. It's going to be amounts reported on W-2, blocks 12A through D, with these codes. Okay, make sure a lot of them don't have those codes. IRA deductions and payments to self-employed SEP, simple KIOs, and other plans. You don't know what to do? It's just in these lines. Child support received, not foster care or adoption payments. Tax-exempt interest. What I'm telling you, folks, is that they walk you through it. If you got a 0 on this line, it goes in as a 0. Untaxed portion of IRA distributions and pensions. It's there. If it's not there, it's 0. Military, clergy, housing payments, disability, death, indemnity, other untaxed income, right? Not other untaxed income, but not. We talked about the portions that you're not, don't include earned income tax credit, blah, blah, blah. All right. And that's what I wanted to do or show you with respect to the FAFSA. Now, the CSS profile is a separate profile. We can talk about that some other time. It's for the highly rejected schools that digs into your money with a fine-tooth comb for purposes of making sure that you'll be willing to contribute money to build a building. Now, if you want to know what goes into the EFC, I told you I have 11 pages here. You can print it out of what goes into your EFC. And just know parents' income, it's AGI, minus taxes that you paid, right? Parent contribution from assets, student income, allowances. There are allowances against the money, right? So there used to be that if you made a certain amount of money that you had a asset protection plan or money and asset protection. You could protect $20,000 or $30,000 as far as not reporting it to help you with the contribution, the EFC, making it lower. Well, in the Obama administration, that changed and it went from about $38,000 to about $3,000. It's not going to make a huge difference. So folks, that's the walkthrough through the FAFSA. Okay, a couple things I want you to keep in mind. Number one, through this process, don't listen to other people unless it's somebody like me who knows what they're talking about. Two, don't fall for anything where somebody's trying to say they can get you into a particular bracket and get you into need, but they're not willing to tell you unless you pay them some money for them to tell you. Okay, if you have any questions that you can't answer from the form, I'm here to help. Please feel free to reach out. And that is about it. I have other seminars about mistakes you can make and things like that. But the best thing to understand is the amount of money that colleges are charging you now is unrelated to reality. And you just have to understand the only way you're going to get a better deal on a college is to pick a cheaper college and to go to a school where your child is valued as an asset. All right. Well, I will be on tomorrow at noon, like I always am. This is recorded. Share it with your friends. If you have any additional questions or anything else, and you're all very welcome for thanking me. I hope you have a great night and good luck with the FAFSA. And as always, I always say it, be kind. All right, guys. We'll talk to you later. Have a good evening.